Welcome to The Growth Show with me as your host, Joe Camerato. I am an entrepreneur who created my company, National Business Capital, from literally $0 out of my spare bedroom to over $2 billion in business loans secured for entrepreneurs nationwide. Since 2007, I have seen just about every type of business. I provide money and help entrepreneurs access capital to scale fast, but I also know that it's possible for you as you scale to replace yourself, to build systems, processes, and great teams of people that can live on without you so you can actually enjoy your life and your company can still grow. I will not only tell you the peaks and valleys of my story, but I will also bring on world-class entrepreneurs to tell their stories and share their lessons on their growth journeys. Welcome to The Growth Show. All right. Welcome to The Growth Show. Well, it's all about scaling, growing, making it happen in your business, pushing yourself to the next level. Excited to have Chad Price on the show today. Chad was a former athlete turned serial entrepreneur, founder of Kettlebell Kings, Living Fit, Life Grows Green, hemp and cannabis advocate, athlete, serial entrepreneur, and small business advocate. And Chad has scaled and sold multiple companies now. I'm really excited to have him on the show today and just talk about his growth journey, what it's taken to move from being an athlete to then building businesses and really being focused as an entrepreneur today. So welcome to the show, Chad.
Thank you for having me. It's very nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you as well too. And so I guess kind of taking me back, to being an athlete, then moving to what's next, and how'd you kind of get into the world of figuring out, it must have been hard figuring out what business to start or what direction to go in, and just kind of curious to hear, really hear your story of how you made that transition.
Sure. I think I kind of knew early on, I would say even like at 12 years old, 14 years old, I was kind of thinking about myself as, CEO of some company or running my own brand or business. I think a lot of that comes from the camaraderie of team sports and things that I played on. I was able to achieve, some pretty good goals athletically. My high school won the state championship. We went to the state championship 2 years back to back. And so I really, even from that age, knew I want to be around an organization that wins, that does things that, I'm proud to be associated with. And ultimately that came with kind of trying to build a brand that I could put all of that energy and focus into. So after I graduated from high school, ended up getting a scholarship to play football at Rice, went there, had a successful career there. After I graduated, still tried to play football a little bit, played in a couple of smaller pro leagues, arena football and things like that. Once I decided, okay, it's time for me to hang my cleats up and officially choose a career, if you will. I had kind of jobs in between while I was still playing football. So I had like a sales job and construction job trying to pay the bills. So during that time period, I was always trying to kind of build knowledge and build experiences that would help me once I started my entrepreneurial journey. After I got into construction, I stayed in there for a while, got into oil and gas, stayed in there for 3 or 4 years. And then when I was about 26, 27, I really decided, I have a good corporate job. I can see the trajectory of my career in corporate America. I know what, a position above me looks like. I know the responsibilities of 3 positions above me. So I can kind of project on what that experience is going to be. And I knew I was at a milestone or at a fork in the road, even where if I wanted to, be in corporate America, I could do that and I could stay there, and I think I would do well. And if I want to start my own business, it was going to take just as much effort and time to do so. And I kind of needed to make that decision. So I started at that point kind of making that formal decision that I'm going to start my own company. Started 2 companies at the same time. One was just a nail salon so that I could have some type of cash flow. And then another was my most notable company, Kettlebell Kings, the fitness company that started. And for me, it was, I think just like anyone else, you get in corporate America, you're running the rat race, and eventually you decide like, hey, if I'm gonna, I know I can stay in this. I'm decent at it. I'm good at it. But if I really want to start my own thing, I have to kind of jump in with both feet. So that's what I did.
How did you pick a nail salon? Like that's just so random.
People always say that. Yeah, people always. That's the question I always get. They're like a football player doing nails. What is this? You know. And even when I worked there, people were like, "Where's the owner?" I'm like, "I am the owner." You know, it's hilarious some of the conversations that I would have. But yeah, no,
That's
I
funny.
mean, I looked up at the time, cash flow positive businesses that could generate revenue. Obviously, I had coming from a good corporate job, you know, you have that stability of a corporate paycheck. And one of the biggest fears in entrepreneurship is really how are you going to pay your bills and chase your dreams at the same time. And I knew that building a brand wasn't something that would generate cash overnight. I knew that it was going to take time. The vision of the community that I wanted to build, I needed to bring so much value before I could extract real cash from them, especially cash that could support, let's say, me and investors and business partners and things like that. So I knew that was going to be years before we could get to that point, and I needed something in the meantime. My girlfriend happened to be very good at nails. So during the time period where I was starting the company and we're building out the construction, she actually just went ahead and got her nails license. So now I had a creative nail artist that was kind of, let's say, my superstar nail artist that I could trust and run day-to-day operations. And now I just needed to kind of build the rest of the team, and building the brand for me was easy. You know, that kind of overlapped with some of my other experiences. It was more, I wasn't able to actually physically do the nails, so I had my girlfriend there to do that part for me.
Yeah, I didn't think that you were doing the nails, but I definitely I think
Some
you
people
just
do.
the
Yeah,
owner.
some people do. They're like, oh, you can do nails. You know what an ombre is? Like, yeah, I know all of the lingo. I know every single nail lingo that's out there. I'm probably the most educated nail person the most unsuspecting educated nail person that you've ever met.
Love it.
But
That's great. Well, I don't knock it. I like to keep my nails clean, so all good.
yeah.
Nice. And then, so tell me about Kettlebell Kings. I mean, that sounds exciting. I love the brand and the name. And what kind of put you on that mission? And I guess just kind of talk through how you started that. And you took it from really an idea, right? To scaling it and selling it.
Yeah, so I mean, during this time period when I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to actually do with my entrepreneurial career, I knew I wanted to start a company, but I had no idea what that company was. So Kettlebell Kings was me going on that journey and trying to find something that I could actually build a brand around, and something that fit, let's say, my network and experiences that I've already been through. One of at the just so happened at that time period, I was also trying to find something, let's say a workout routine that I could do long term versus kind of the previous workout routines that I was used to, which were training for high performance sports events and things like that. So I knew
Yeah.
I needed to do a more functional training system, and I didn't like commercial gyms at all. I felt like commercial gyms were like going to a nightclub sometimes, and I really just wanted to work out and get out of there and not be kind of bothered with the social aspect of it. So I got into home workouts a lot and minimalist workouts. And once I found the kettlebell, I noticed that there were serious enthusiasts around this product, but there were no real brands that saw that or were taking advantage of that kind of natural gravitation to build a community around it. So, there's not a real enthusiast around dumbbells, for example. There are people that do it, but it's not the same level of intensity. And I knew there was no real street level urban brand that made it cool and invited people into a community for just a positive aspect of life. I don't look at any single tool as the end all be all for your health and wellness routine, but I think you can use these things as pieces or centerpiece of a community, and that's really what I wanted to build ultimately. So once we saw that, we were like, hey, let's really look into if there are any brands that are really, let's say, specializing in this, and there were none. So our original idea was to come up with a kettlebell superstore and sell other people's kettlebells and really be the ESPN of the kettlebell world and sell products of other people's. Maybe one day we make our own, maybe not. But in the first I would say in the first year or two, we realized there are no companies that take this very serious. They see this as an ancillary product, not necessarily as the centerpiece. And that was a huge advantage for us. So we decided, hey, let's partner with the top organizations in the world and really try to go out and create the best kettlebells that exist on the planet and that will ever exist on the planet. And that mission just resonated so much with the community to where it was just a never ending kind of snowball effect of people joining up. If you want positive content information for something around the kettlebell, this is the place to find it.
Wow. And what was the biggest challenge would you say you faced with building that business?
So many, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the aspect of trying to fund things. When you're starting a business like that, we started the business with all of our savings. I think we put in like $10,000 each, so it's like we started with like $30,000, and that was our first order, and we just kept kind of flipping it from there. Obviously, new funds needed to be put in over time, but you really realize like a growing business can eat up all your cash flow, and it can,
Oh yeah.
and it can always use more. It's like it's a black hole sometimes, and it's a good thing. So I think it's hard for some people to recognize that. Me being from sports, I know when the pressure gets more intense, and you got more people calling, more people watching what you're doing. That's a good sign. And so I think some of my background in sports helped me through that pressure, but figuring out when to do what, I think, is the hardest part. So like when to take on an investment, when to take on serious investments, or really entertain the idea of a outside investor coming into the business. I think some of those things were probably the more difficult part. I think we could have sold the company maybe 2 or 3 years earlier than we did if we would have recognized like, hey, we have something sooner, and really set the company up to be sold. But part of that is the lessons that we learned going through that process. So, I don't know that going through those lessons wouldn't have stopped me from ultimately getting to the acquisition at the end either. So I think it's one of those things that you never know if you time something perfectly, but as long as you're taking those micro steps in the right direction, it's kind of hard to mess up if you're self-evaluating those micro steps.
Makes sense. When you started growing, did you use equity, debt and equity, both, or one or the other? What's your thoughts on that?
Everything we could get our hands on. I think we were doing everything. I think the most, when I talk about just a kind of the top line number, the biggest numbers or the biggest financial partners we would have would be like the merchant capital advance loans, which are terrible loans, and we were able to do that because we had such a high turnover on the products that we sold. So we knew if we were able to get products, we would sell out of a bunch of the products. So it was a matter of really just trying to get that turnover as fast as possible. But ultimately, even the sale itself was kind of sparked by international expansion and the capital required for such a venture. If you're talking about, moving into 10 new countries where there's an inventory base that needs to be bought for each of those countries, and you can't really do that from cash flow. So during those conversations, that really is when you I think start really thinking about kind of the big vision of the brand, and if it's good to partner with someone. And what we ended up doing was going into a 3-year acquisition where we kind of partnered or merged with a larger company that was a little more financially stable than us, and they could then take on some of those burdens of the international expansion of the inventory and marketing efforts in each country, and those types of things.
Yeah. I think just the right type of financing is really important, and the merchant cash advances have a time and a place. There's some bad companies and there's some really good companies that do it. There's some that do it much longer term now. And then there's other products like term loans and lines of credit, but it all just depends on like what you're doing and what the cycle is, and what you guys are doing, equity probably made sense if you were expanding really rapidly and weren't cash flowing right off the bat, but if you had like a store that you knew you could open up, it would cost this and you'd be cash flowing on this date, then it could support the debt you're taking on. So it's just like healthy balance. A lot of people talk about like, oh, you should only borrow debt and not equity, or only equity and not debt. And I do think it's like a combo of all, but it really just depends on like what you're doing and what you're using it for. And there's not really a blanket answer to that, which is interesting. A lot of people talk about it in like a number of different ways, but every situation is really different. And so I always try and share with entrepreneurs, you really have to like understand like what you're using capital for, and how things turn, and if you're going to lay out X amount of dollars, like when you're getting it, when you're going to get it back. And especially if you're having inventory made overseas, if that's a long process, you really need the right type of financing tool for that, because it can really trip you up with the wrong type of debt.
Yeah, absolutely. And even, for us, when you talk about kind of looking back at it from, a 10-year journey, I think in year 3, we could have really talked about financing, but did we know what markers to be looking for in order to talk about financing? And were we confident in those markers? The confidence came through continuously building it and then making those types of decisions based off where we were. So if we would have made the decision to take on financing in year 3, I think that would have been a different type of financing, and maybe not even the best type of financing for us. So it's a difficult thing, and that's what makes business great is, I don't necessarily think there's a lot of right and wrong situations in business. It's just a matter of the trade-offs that you have to deal with, and if they overlap with your ultimate goal.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, it's so funny. It's always easy looking back.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's what I loved about writing my first book was I was like, this 10-year journey is almost too ironic for me not to do it. And looking back at it, it's like, yeah, why didn't we do this? Why didn't we? What was I thinking? And I know what I was thinking, and I can even, I talk to my partner now, and I'm like, do you remember, 7 years ago how dumb we were? And we joke about it, but I think that's the good thing about entrepreneurship is it's a never ending journey. If I stopped right now and didn't pay attention to anything going on and I tried to start again, I wouldn't be up to date or up to speed on what types of decisions I need to be making for my business. And I think that's what makes entrepreneurship so challenging and so fulfilling at the same time.
Well, it's a lot of painful learning, and you definitely remember because you have to go through so much freaking pain to figure stuff out.
Yeah.
It's never ending. Learning. I mean, you don't know what you don't know. And the most interesting thing, it doesn't matter like what school you went through, what your background is, like until you own a business, like you don't know what it's like to own a business. So you kind of have to everyone as an entrepreneur at some point went through being an entrepreneur. It's not like a gradual thing that you learn. You just kind of jump into the fire and then you just got to figure it out. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Nice. So what's next for you, right? You sold 2 companies, which is just amazing. What do you think's next for you? Where's your focus now?
My main focus now is, previous to now, I've always kind of been focused on the brands and building up the brands that I've been associated with. So now I'm, really working on building up the brand of Chad Price and some of the philosophies I use in business. So even with the sale, my goal was to work with multiple brands at once, so multiple direct consumer brands. And I'm just doing that now through consulting positions with different companies. So I can do that through executive coaching, through, change management, digital transformations. These types of things are kind of my area or specialty, but really working with any company that's trying to grow positive communities for the world. I see chadprice.com as like that central hub. So obviously I'm working on a book and I'm doing a podcast and trying to create content around the lessons that I've learned and how I view growing businesses or building communities. But at the same time, I am completely open to really kind of the future right now. I think I'm in a really good spot where I have the perspective of what it's like from day-to-day operations and running a business. And I'm fortunate to kind of be switching into a position of a little higher level investing and looking at businesses from a acquisition and potential of the business versus kind of just making things work on a day-to-day basis and putting out fires.
Yeah. Going into like an investor, chairman, coaching type of a role.
Yeah, for sure.
What are you most excited about?
I'm excited about this book that I'm writing now. I didn't really know what it was going to be like to write a book after my first one. It was a kind of a great milestone for me. And now that I've kind of gotten that first one out of the way, I'm like, I could have done that so much better. So I'm really excited about doing it. I think the second book is going to be a lot more of what I wanted to say and the things I feel like I may have missed in the first book. I tried to write the first book as I didn't want to write it at, let's say, a PhD level. So I'm not saying I dumbed it down, but I did want to write it at a level that a young entrepreneur or someone who's just starting could understand it. So I did a lot of editing it down in that way. And I think with this one, I'm really going to focus on the things that I'm more specialized in, which is kind of the community aspect. And, the brand that I'm building now under kind of chatprice.com is this fans first concept of really putting the fan as the centerpiece and trying to build communities that bring value to those centerpieces. And if you can follow or find out kind of what that is, it makes kind of business decisions a lot easier.
Yeah, 100%. How do you think you did that? How did you, like building a community, I think is great for any business. Anything you want to share there of how you built that, in Kettlebell Kings? Obviously there's a following, I guess, around kettlebell that you tapped into, but how do you feel that you kind of pulled those folks together and really built that community and really created one that wasn't, I think, in existence, right?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, and I think when you're trying to do something like that, it was beneficial for me not to really have any experience with the kettlebell itself. So I was coming in as a complete novice. I had plenty of, I'd worked out more than most people in my life, or more than most people who even use kettlebells, but I had never really used that tool. I didn't know how to properly teach people how to use it or use it myself. And so going on my own personal journey really helped me find the people who were serious and credible in that space. And I think every business should be kind of doing that. Like once you decide that I'm going to be a world-renowned expert at something, I think it's just a matter of time before you find the community that also agrees with the kind of high-level credible knowledge that exists out there. And that's what I try to do with any business that I'm associated with. Is I really try to hold the business accountable for being on the forefront of content generation and knowledge and news of this industry. And when you're able to do that, to me, the community kind of respects that and wants to build around you. So you become more of a space to share these ideas versus a place where, you're just using them to sell a product. Like I genuinely want to be the place where high level kettlebell enthusiasts go to share their most prevalent or relevant ideas. And that's kind of the starting point for it all.
Nice. Awesome. Great stuff. And how can folks find you, Chad? Where can they go to learn more?
The best place to find me is chatprice.com. You're going to be able to find a bunch of different avenues to my businesses and my books and things like that, my social content. So I'm also on Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn. You can find me on there as well. But chatprice.com and filling out the contact forms on there is probably the best way to get in touch with me.
Great. And what's as we wrap up here, and definitely appreciate you sharing your story, and some tips and things that you went through as you grew and scaled your business. As we wrap up, what is a growth tip that you would share with fellow entrepreneurs?
The number one growth tip I would probably give people is, try to bring free value if you can, to your community. One of the things that I would tell people all the time is, if I try to just run an ad and sell someone a kettlebell, it'll never happen. And I think kettlebells are they're an extreme example of this, in which gives me more perspective, I believe, than most people. It may take 6 months to a year to convince somebody to buy something from you. But if you can bring them some type of value during that meantime, even if it's just in the form of content or news, or, for us, we would do free workouts, different things like that. These types of things go a long ways to people, consciously and subconsciously, and make people feel more comfortable with you. So you might not see the sales at first, but if you're growing a community, then it just becomes a matter of converting that community. And converting that community is a lot easier if you have a community versus you trying to make one-on-one sales every day.
Yeah, really well said. Definitely appreciate it, and great advice. Thanks again for being on the show. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep growing. Good luck with your next ventures, and excited to follow you and your work and everything that you're doing. Also to help and support other entrepreneurs. I think it's great stuff.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks a lot. Be well.